Hold on.
All right. You ready?
Good morning, everyone.
Good
morning.
You want me to call the meeting to order?
Yes, let's call this special meeting to order. Mr. Attorney, if you could please do a roll call.
Sure. We have Vice Mayor Kaplan.
Here.
We have Councilmember Dela Cruz.
Here.
Councilmember Gary Gross is not here. Mayor Lindsay.
Here.
Councilmember McCormick.
Here.
Councilmember Moss.
Here.
Councilmember Petros.
Here.
We have the Pledge of Allegiance.
Everyone please stand. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, I will be opening public comments. For the record, there is no one in the public right now. Clearly way too early for our Key Biscayners. I will be closing public comments. And now, for our council discussion, Chad, do you want to?
Sure.
And I will then make a comment.
Sure. The special call meeting was called this morning to discuss the village manager's transition. I think, as everyone knows, before I start, I want to let you all know that Andrea called me and told me she's available by phone if we need to call her. On June 25th, the council approved Andrea's employment agreement. And as everyone knows, there was an intentional overlap between her agreement as far as when it commences and with John's agreement as to when John's agreement expires. As I said, that was intentional. It was a way to provide for a seamless transition between the two managers and to allow for John to act somewhat in a senior capacity and advisory role to the manager during that time frame. During the discussions with Andrea and with John and with many of you, it was always understood that that was the arrangement that was going to occur. As you all are aware, shortly, I guess after Monday night on Tuesday, after the vote, we received an email from John expressing concerns that the action of the council may have terminated him and that he was entitled to severance and pay. And that's...
If so.
Yes. And that's what I believe really prompted us to come here today, as that created some uncertainty as to the approach that we were taking and from what John had put forward. And I think now I'll turn it over to John. I know that John wanted to speak on that issue, and then after he concludes, we can discuss the path forward and how to address this.
Thank you.
Mayor, if I may.
Please.
First, I'd like to thank this council for my last 6 years as a public servant, serving as your village manager, and also for the last 25 years as a first responder in this island paradise. I truly am the poster child for the old saying, I'm the luckiest man in the world. Looking ahead, I've had opportunity and the privilege of working very closely with the next generation of public servants, led by an outstanding nominee and an outstanding incoming manager, Ms. Andrea Aga. Council made a wise decision in offering her the opportunity to lead this community forward with the projects and with the challenges that lie ahead. I have watched her leadership style and the fire that burns within her to work closely with all of the moving parts to accomplish and to fulfill the desires of this council. In closing, it is my desire, and I hope that the council's direction will be, to allow me to complete my journey as the old man with a tremendous institutional memory that can still be of great assistance one last time, especially as I complete and fulfill my contractual obligation to the Village of Key Biscayne on September 30th, 2018. I am requesting that council agree to amend my contract to convert my employment status to that of a senior advisor to the village manager and to maintain the same terms and conditions as provided for in my current contract. I want to sincerely apologize for any misunderstanding that may have taken place. This was handled. This needed to be handled. We are there today, and I'm only looking forward. And thank you.
Thank you. Katie, and then I'm going to speak.
Okay. I would just like to comment on the fact that I'm very happy that this is your approach today. And I feel good about that. I think it's the best thing for the village. I don't understand why that just didn't happen naturally. And given that the email and the timing of the email, I found that to be unfortunate for all of us. And as a result, we've spent 2 weeks, and the lawyers have spent a lot of time trying to come up with a different solution. And it was specifically because of the email that was sent to us. All along, you informed us you were retiring, and I felt like as a council, we respected that, and we were open to trying to work out a natural transition, and you seemed open to that. And it wasn't until we had actually agreed on this contract that an email was sent to the lawyers stating that you were requesting a lump sum for severance. And I don't think that's in order for this village to operate in its optimal way, there has to be a level of trust between us and you. And I feel like that was somewhat of a violation of that trust, and I hope we can regain it. And I think the steps you're taking today do that, and I appreciate that.
I'll speak, Luis, Allison, and Frank. And just to address, we are here today because we were put on notice that there was a request for severance, and so we need to address this publicly. We can't just be put on notice and ignore what happened. I do want to reiterate, John, I appreciate you. I was working with what I thought was your timeline. I value your service. I understood that you wanted to retire September 30th. Having said that, we found that it was best practices to have an overlap so that there would be a good transition. That was my intent. I thought it was had a meeting of the minds and that you understood that. I want to make that very clear. It was just a period for transition so that you could, in fact, impart your institutional knowledge. Never did I consider this termination, and what I contemplated, and I'm only one vote and one person, but from the conversations we had, you and I, for years, and from the feedback that I got from our attorneys, it was always my understanding that your contract would be honored and that you would be paid and until September 30th. I do also have to say I was blindsided and hurt because I thought we had a very good line of communication. So I am glad you spoke this, and I know we spoke yesterday, and I feel good about what we've discussed. I'm sorry that this happened. I'll have to tell you that when I received the letter, I felt that I'd lost a little confidence in what we were doing because I thought that there was bad communication and we were going in a bad direction. But I do feel that with statements today and the clarification, I can move forward. So, Luis, Allison, and Frank.
So,
Okay.
I'm really happy that you started with the speech that you gave because mistakes can be made, and the first thing that one does when one makes a mistake is try to right it. And I can't tell you how hurt I was when I got your email, because I feel that in the 4 years that I've been up here, I have done everything in my power never to throw you under the bus and never to throw any of your directors under the bus. And I've never challenged somebody and embarrassed them. And I believe that email that we received embarrassed me. And I think that other members of the council feel the same way. And it certainly embarrassed our council, with whom you had been working, diligently in what we thought was a very cooperative way in order to bring Andrea on and to have you help in the best way possible. It was, I stayed on top of that particular relationship. I made sure that I was informed of any drawbacks or anything with the negotiations of the contracts, and never once was it brought to my attention that there was any issue whatsoever with you. So for us to first get that very public email, which, as you well know, becomes public the moment you send it, was hurtful. And again, I appreciate that you said what you said when we started, and I'm willing to go forward with it. But I just wanted to let you know how I felt about it.
Yes, sir.
Allison.
I also want to thank you for
Public rebuke, right?
your comments at the beginning. I think we're exactly where all of us, including John, thought we would be at this point. I'd like to add that I'm sorry that we got here, and I'm sorry for John that this is happening, because I feel that we were all on the same page, but somewhere along the line, our actions, something happened that put you in a situation where you felt the need to send that email. And I think after 25 years of very, very loyal service, I can only imagine the feeling of uncertainty or frustration that would have prompted it. And so I know that I have been less communicative with you in recent weeks, and I would like to apologize if anything I did put you in a situation that made you feel uneasy and prompted that. So I'm really happy that we're where we are, and I know that you have been working really hard with Andrea, and I know that you're going to continue to be there and continue to serve. And I'm happy where we are, and I know that you're going to continue to do what you do. So thank you.
Okay, so Frank and then Brett, and then let's discuss next steps and what we need to document.
Thank you. I feel aligned with more so with what Allison said than with the prior remarks, which I feel lack a degree of empathy. In a relationship with two parties, one party's understanding of what's going on is only half the understanding. John's understanding is more at what's at issue, as I see it, than our understanding. When we took the action that we took on the 25th, which was positive action, which we all supported after a difficult process, John's reaction, as I perceive it, informed by his duty to us, suggested to him that our charter doesn't permit two managers to serve simultaneously. The week prior, he had told me the arrangements that he was working out with Andrea, which were perfectly consistent with where we are. But I think that he expected clarification on what this meant, what this decision meant relative to his contract. Her contract was very clear. But inasmuch as we can't have two managers serving as manager, as he saw it, I think that's a reasonable interpretation of what our charter provides, he sought clarification. And he didn't get it. The next day, we had a council meeting, Tuesday, and the subject came up, the subject of the email came up, which I hadn't read at that time, and we didn't talk about it. He'd already sent the email, so I think that was a surprise to all of us. But the way I look at that surprise is he was animated by a need to communicate. The second surprise was at the council meeting Tuesday night, where we had an opportunity to deal with this, and we didn't. So I overheard John whisper the words public rebuke a moment ago. I think some of that rebuke lies with us. I don't think we communicated well. And I don't think we anticipated this ramification that he spotted and we didn't. And I think further, you know, John, if we're really going to be empathetic about this, he might have learned, because of his pension issue, that patience and trust that all would be well didn't quite serve him as well as he thought it should in that connection. So that's the perspective that I have in looking at this. And it all comes back to where we are now, which is where we thought we would be the week before we adopted her contract. This is precisely where we wanted to be. And it's all fixed. It could have been fixed easier. It could have been fixed without so much question, as Katie mentioned, the several weeks now of assessment about why this happened, what the ramifications are, and what does this mean, were all avoidable as I see it, and I regret that. And I'm just glad that John will be able to continue to do what he's done so well for us, for Andrea, during his remaining term, and I'd like to make the best of it while we got it.
Sean, like everybody says, I was caught surprised by it as well. And we spoke yesterday, and I have to say that I'm happy that you stand by that decision that you spoke a few minutes ago. And I'm glad that you're looking forward. I think that we should be looking forward and looking at how we're going to do this transition as smooth as possible and get this new manager up and running. And your help will be greatly appreciated. And that's it for me.
Thank you. Yes.
Just in response a little bit to what you were mentioning, Frank, when you discuss communication, I do believe it was a breakdown, but I believe that breakdown was before our meetings. And I feel like I personally was involved with a lot of the negotiations of this contract. And if John was concerned about his final weeks of employment, he could have brought that easily to the attention of the lawyers, and that could have been very easily clarified in writing if necessary. It was verbally clarified what was going to happen, and there was never any mention of concern. So in addition, the meeting that we had, it wasn't on the table. It wasn't something that we knew we needed to discuss. We actually talked about the fact that there was no need to discuss severance because there was no termination without cause. We were doing a retirement. Everybody was on the same page. So I don't feel like that's entirely accurate, and it doesn't take away from John your years of service and where we are today, but I don't think the council needed to be rebuked on this one.
I appreciate the clarification, and I think if it wasn't for John's other issue that persists as we sit here this minute, our communication would be more reliable. I think that has to be taken into account as having affected our collective psychology on how we communicate with each other.
I don't see these two issues as interrelated. I think they're very distinct and separate and should be dealt with distinctly and separately.
We're talking not about the issues. We're talking
Frank,
not about the issues, but about
Frank.
communication.
Okay, let's have some structure. Are you done, Katie?
I'm done.
Okay. And I can tell you, to me, it's two separate issues. John and I communicated directly. I asked him specifically, what are your wishes? We are doing this now. What is it that you want? I thought we had very open communication. Clearly, there was a breakdown. I wish if there was a need for clarification, tone is everything. And I was taken aback by the tone. And I do see it as two very separate issues. John, I value you. It was never, ever my intent, nor do I think, having heard from the council, to terminate you in any way, to lessen the impact you've had for us, which has been very positive. It was our intent to meet the terms of the contract until September 30th. I'm sorry that we got waylaid. I wish, had you had a concern, that it had been done with a different type of communication, or, words are important. And I think, we were taken aback. But I'm glad to move forward. But it's unfair to tie it, Frank. You're speaking for other people and what their thought process is. I can tell you, it's not my thought process. And I need to make that clear. You raise it.
I appreciate
I think
that.
It's inappropriate.
No, it's not. We're talking about communication. Frankly, I'm disappointed in our legal counsel on this. I have to say it. I don't know that this was incumbent upon Katie or you or me or any of us to speak to this, because we were all informed the week before that their transition had been essentially worked out consensually between the two of them. And whatever caused John to react like he did, which is inconsistent, in my view, with an entire course of dealing over a very long time, he was provoked for some reason. And this shouldn't have happened, and it's worth us understanding, if we can, where the communication broke down. I'm talking about communication. I'm not conflating two separate issues.
We've already spoken.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Are we good? Can we move forward and address this appropriately so we fix it? And John, thank you for, I'm glad we're all moving forward, but I think we need to document things appropriately and clearly so that this is done and we put it in the past.
Let's do it.
So I understand we have two options.
So
yes.
I think what the way to accomplish what John proposed is that John's agreement was approved by resolution. So we can read a resolution title into the record, and then we can articulate what you, as the council, will approve by motion, and we will then draw up an amendment and give you the authority to sign it as mayor.
Okay.
So it would be a resolution of the Village Council, the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, approving an amendment to John C. Gilbert's employment agreement, providing for authorization and providing for an effective date. The approval would be that the Village Council approves an amendment to John's employment agreement, which provides that during the transition period of August 13th through September 30th, or until such time as Mr. Gilbert ceases employment with the village, whether comes first, that Mr. Gilbert shall be appointed to the position of senior advisor to the manager, and will no longer have the authority, power, and duties as village manager set forth under the employment agreement, the charter, and the code. Mr. Gilbert will be available to Ms. Aga as needed basis in the transition in becoming village manager, and all other terms and conditions of the agreement would remain the same.
Moved.
Second.
Okay. Vice Mayor Kaplan,
Yes.
Councilmember Dela Cruz.
Yes.
Mayor Lindsay.
John, are you good with that?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Councilmember McCormick.
Yes.
Councilmember Moss.
Yes.
Councilmember Petros.
Yes.
Passes. Move to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
The meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much.